So I was once at a house party about 15 years ago, and it's one of them ones where people are out the front and everyone was just talking, and a girl came up to us and she's called Becca, and she looked like she just had some kind of I don't know, incident, and she was kind of half laughing, half surprised, half a bit like angry, and she was telling me that what had happened to her. She'd been speaking to a guy, and in the middle of the conversation, she'd been going full flow, and the guy had lost interest and just sort of switched off and turned around and joined in another conversation while she was still speaking. And this had really bothered her. Like, it kind of, she was laughing, she could see the funny side, so we so we kind of laughed it away. But it was a kind of an affront. She'd felt like taken aback by this guy's back being turned on her, and so we carried on talking. And as the conversation progressed, because she was a rascal and full of mischief, what she'd do then was occasionally just turn her back when you were talking, just in mid-flow. And I can remember, even though it was funny and I knew it was a joke, and we started doing it to each other all evening, just when people had forgotten, we'd turn our backs on each other. I can remember feeling it and feeling like, I know it's a joke and it's still bothering me. Why is it still bothering me? She could say, you can make jokes, you can say what you like, but this still bothered me. And I don't mean it like a first world problem. It was just like a surprise that this joke, that the power of your body being turned away, of using your body as a kind of weapon to suggest that someone else is of no value. I mean, it's only something like, I suppose it equates to being having, like, say, water thrown on your face, or being chucked in a swimming pool or something like that, or custard pie in your face. It doesn't really hurt you, it doesn't really, no lasting effect, but it kind of bugged me. Now, this might be making no sense, but then all of a sudden, that power of people to, like, cause you an affront, or to make you something of an insult to you, is being done en masse by the population, because we're all avoiding each other. You know, in the old days, one of the greatest things you could do to someone was to ostracize them, to exile them, and that might have been because of maybe it was hard to survive for food and shelter and self-defense on your own as opposed to in the group. But also there's a power to the way we respond to one another. So I've noticed that feeling. I've remembered that story from 15 years ago, walking down the streets these days today, when people move out of my way and I'm annoyed at them. I'm like, what are you moving out your way from me for? Like, what is going on? We have been, it's kind of like we've been weaponized against each other. Our humanity is being kind of, we're being socially distanced, emotionally, not physically, emotionally. Because there's like nothing social about being distanced, nothing social about being distant from one another. So that bothered me. Then also you look at it in a different way. If we think about the way we nurture each other and we care for each other, if you're an infant, like they know this from the Romanian orphans, I think it was Ceausescu's time in Romania, when they went in there and they found Romanian orphans. They were underdeveloped in a variety of ways. The hippocampus, part of the brain, had not developed properly. Like, I know it sounds like a place where hippos go to study, but the hippocampus hasn't developed properly. But not only that, some of them died. You can't do tests on the infants who had died. So just by the absence of touch, a baby can be affected that much. And so we know it's essential to human interaction. And so all the people living alone, all the old people who live for their grandchildren, and the grandchildren can't see them because in some way they're now a threat. The very grandchildren, people they live for, are considered a threat to them, it's turned into some kind of weapon against them. It seems like a very strange way of going about life. Now, now the official reasoning for this is that it's like a defense to help prevent the spread of an illness. But what if it's a greater malaise to turn us against one another? Like, they're not, the other thing, really important thing to remember here is they're talking about this not in terms of a temporary measure. They're talking about this in terms of the new normal. All over the world, people are talking about the new normal, the new normal. All the politicians have suddenly got this hymn sheet and they're all singing from it about the new normal, and it's going to last forever and things may never go back to normal. And that Dr. Fauci in the United States is talking about how you may never shake hands again. So when you're talking about, and shaking hands, they've made that a weapon. So like in terms of when you shake hands with somebody, they say that came from a practice where, you know, if you were armed, you might hold your weapon in your right hand. So if you're no longer allowed to shake hands, it may be you are armed against the person that you refuse to shake hands with. This is the psychology of this is really clever. So if we think of it as a benign government, we think, oh yeah, they're trying to stop us all getting ill, which is fine. But if for a second you might imagine a crazy world, like a conspiratorial world, where it's really hard to imagine, you're going to have to work with me here, where governments lie to you, where they lie to you to the extent where they lie you into wars, where they use your blood, sweat and tears to pay for the destruction of nations and the murder of millions. A crazy world like that, imagine that, where they use your effort and your labor to fund atrocities and lie to you about it. And then if you think about that, a world like that, then could it be possible that there's also a world where they might turn us against one another? Because there are people who say that in the military and in the coming surveillance network, that if we have to stand 2 meters apart, and now they're saying it's further, there's been some articles and studies that I think the government ones, well, we can check it, I'll put them in the notes beneath this, but they're saying now that we have to stand even further apart. I mean, how much, the other thing that we've got to remember is that across the world, civil liberties have been reduced in apparently the face of this viral threat, so that your freedom of assembly has been removed. So that kind of serves the purpose of any government that doesn't want you to assemble, which is not in our interest, especially if we start to think that the measures they're taking are too draconian and too long, or not in our own benefit. There are several things to consider there. I might leave it at that just to give you some thought for the day, and we'll reconvene on whether the whole thing is legal anyway at some point in the future.